Welcome into another special edition of the Fast Lane here on our podcast feed. Time to preview the University of Virginia as they travel this time to Champaign, Illinois to take on the Fighting Illini. Rejoining me, we previewed the game last year. We're previewing the game this year. Scott Richey from the Champaign News Gazette. Scott, how are you doing? Hope all is well.
Yeah, doing great. Thanks for having me on again this year.
All right, let's jump right into it. And a lot has changed for both these teams. Obviously the stalwart Brendan Armstrong is there, but let's dive into Illinois. I think there's a lot more buzz around this team after the start of their season. Arguably, they could be 2-0 after that game against Indiana last week. But Tommy DeVito's come in. The offense looks a little different. This is definitely a much more interesting team compared to last year.
Yeah, and it's not just Tommy DeVito at quarterback, but Barry Lonnie Jr. at offensive coordinator. Brett Bielema made the decision after 1 year to fire Tony Peterson and go a different direction with his offense after it just wasn't good enough last season. So the bones of the offense aren't totally different. I mean, it's still and it has been this season a lot of Chase Brown. He had 36 carries last week at Indiana, a number that Brett Bielema says probably too many and probably not sustainable over the course of a 12 game season. But even with a new coordinator, this is still a Brett Bielema team. Running the ball is going to be a priority. It's going to be important. But Tommy DeVito has given them at least an ability to make the passing game a weapon. And it was so often last year just ineffective and inefficient. But Tommy DeVito has played well through 2 games. He's getting the ball to Isaiah Williams. That was a priority heading into the season, and it was a priority last year that they just didn't figure out. But Isaiah Williams has had a pretty solid start. Brian Hightower, Pat Bryant. There's some weapons in the passing game, but even then, it just still wasn't enough at Indiana in a game that, like you mentioned, Illinois probably should have won.
Yeah, Tommy's looked pretty solid so far. There was a little controversy in that game, but obviously, talking about the Illinois offense, you have to start with Chase Brown, a premier running back in the country. This guy was very good last season, and he's already off to a great start. He's already at 350 yards through 2 games because they played week 0. So what kind of element can Chase Brown bring? Just how good is he?
I mean, he's legit, and he's got a good mix of power and speed. I mean, he's 5'11", 205, but he's just ripped. He and his twin brother Sydney are just workout kings. Like they're freak athletes, and but he's not just strong. Like Chase Brown he's got some burst to him as well. And you look at his 199 rushing yards last week at Indiana. I believe 157 were after contact, so he can take that first hit and then get into another gear for a breakaway. He is. Illinois will probably go as far as Chase Brown takes them. This year he's. Tommy DeVito's been great. Through 2 games, been good at least, but this is Chase Brown's offense. Like they've built a lot around him.
Looking at the game last season, Illinois did score 14 points, but they did put up 337 yards. We'll talk about the other side, the challenges they face, but this is a UVA defense that, looking last week, Richmond was able to move the ball some against them. This is kind of the biggest question mark on this team is, how will their defense improve last season? So how opportunistic can the Illinois offense be against a defense that, has a lot of questions still around it?
I imagine the Illinois coaches watched, that Richmond Virginia game. I know they actually got a chance to watch it live because they played Friday night, but then they watched it again in film, and we're probably fairly excited about the fact that Richmond rushed for pretty good amount of yardage against Virginia, and be like, well, we have Chase Brown, so what can we do in that regard? Be interesting to see how they challenge the Virginia defense, beyond Chase Brown. And the first game against Wyoming didn't pretty much gave what Wyoming they took what Wyoming was giving, and they were playing off the receiver, so it was a lot of short routes, underneath routes. Tested Indiana a little deeper downfield in the passing game last week, so I think the evolution of the passing game will probably be the thing to watch because Chase Brown's going to be Chase Brown.
Before we go to the other side of the matchup and revisit, the last game and kind of where this matchup could come down to is how important, this is the third game of the season for Illinois compared to the second game of the season for UVA. Do you expect kind of more readiness from the Illinois side just because it is truly like they're already kind of a way more into a rhythm compared to where Virginia is, where they just have played an FCS opponent, whereas Illinois already played a conference game?
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic because Illinois had played 2 games before most college football teams had even gotten on the field this season, just the way their schedule shook out. But Brett Bielema has talked about a lot. I'm sure this is all football coaches thing, but some of the biggest improvements come from week 1 to week 2. So Illinois had some of that against Indiana, and I think they expect Virginia to be better this week than they were last week against Richmond, just because there is that game under their belt. I mean, regardless of level of opponent, like they got out and played somebody else, and that's important. So I don't know that Illinois, having 2 games under its belt is a huge advantage. I think the biggest thing is they've made it through those 2 games without much in the way of injuries. So I think that could have been a disadvantage for Illinois if they had somebody get dinged, in either of the first 2 games. And they did play without left tackle Julian Pearl at Indiana, but he was a late scratch. Almost could have gone, and the expectation is he'll be back, this week. So that might be Illinois' only advantage is they've got 2 games in and got those 2 games in healthy.
Moving on to the other side of the ball, obviously Brennan Armstrong put up 400 yards against this defense last season, but this is not, different coaching staff. Tony Elliott comes in and they are wanting to run the football. That is a big part. And so you expect maybe the game not to be so reliant on Brennan Armstrong, but what kind of challenges has the coaching staff talked about this week when facing a quarterback like Armstrong?
Well, they certainly remember what he did a year ago, and that game was sort of an impetus for change for the Illinois defense. They made a couple personnel moves after that game and really just got incrementally better as the season progressed. And the Virginia game was a wake-up call because the Illinois defense was awful in that game. They just gave up pretty much anything Virginia wanted. I think they expect the same from Brennan Armstrong, even with the coaching change. He's just a talented quarterback, and the fact that he can move pretty well running the ball himself, I think is a big challenge for this Illinois defense, and has remained a challenge for Illinois defenses regardless of staff and scheme, for several years now. Just quarterbacks that can run, not always, they're easiest to stop. And week 0 against Wyoming, Andrew Peasley really struggled to throw the ball, but he broke one big run and moved the chains a little bit with his feet. I think the fact that Brennan Armstrong is a good passer and can also run the ball pretty well, they're gonna have to try and keep him contained. The Illinois defense has not gotten great pressure on opposing quarterbacks. Really, it all boils down to only Johnny Newton. Last week in Indiana, I think he led all defensive linemen of the country with QB pressures, but that's about it for 2 games. And their outside linebackers are both essentially new starters. You're replacing guys that have been there for 5 years, started for 5 years, and they have not played as well as expected, and almost going to have to hold the edge, against a Virginia team that with Brennan Armstrong, we'll stretch the field horizontally just as much as we'll vertically.
Also looking at it, this is a really, really good receiving corps. One of the, you look at it in terms of depth and talent, one of the premier in the country. It What kind of challenge is the secondary, facing? How is the secondary look this season? Because there are a lot of versatile weapons that UVA can throw at them.
Yeah, and like big weapons too. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure any team can maybe handle 6, 7 receivers, but because that's just different. It's been a mixed bag for the Illinois secondary through 2 games. They were certainly better against Wyoming than they were against Indiana. Kendall Smith, who's in his first year starting at free safety, um, gave up a deep touchdown. Just got beat on the play. Then he bounced back with a pick. More right place, right time. It was a tipped pass, and he was just there to haul it in. But Sidney Brown is a 4-year starter essentially at this point at strong safety. Quan Martin has played all over the secondary. He's real versatile. Devin Witherspoon has the chance to be a shutdown type corner. I don't think he's there just yet. Illinois cornerbacks coach Aaron Henry would say he's not there yet, but there's some potential there. The other side, Taz Nicholson's a new starter. There's some youth behind him. They're going to be challenged. This will be the stiffest challenge I think they face, at least so far. And if they're able to hold up against Virginia, I think that's a good sign moving forward. If they get beat like they did a year ago, I don't say it'd be cause for concern, but it'd just be like the defense isn't maybe where Ryan Walters wants it to be just yet.
Well, looking at the game, we got a 4.5-point spread. Illinois is actually the favorite. Obviously, this is a home game for the Fighting Illini, so up in Champaign. So, what are your expectations for this game? Do you have a pick yet? I know you're recording this on Wednesday, so it's a little earlier in the week, so you do have time technically. But how do you feel about this game's going to shake out?
I suppose I was a little surprised at the line. 4.5 points. You basically get 3 baked in just for home field advantage. Even then, I'd almost see it be closer to a pick 'em, even with Virginia, coming to Champaign. I went through the whole Illinois schedule a couple weeks ago before the season started, picking games, and I had Virginia winning then. The Indiana loss for Illinois sort of reinforced some of why I thought that. So I think it'll be closer than last year. Won't be tough for Illinois to manage that, but I do have Virginia winning, probably somewhere in the 28-21 range.
Well, Scott, I appreciate your time, taking some time out this week to join me from the great writing at the Champaign News Gazette. How can maybe some UVA fans connect with you and learn more about the opposing side before kickoff?
Well, if they want, they can follow me on Twitter at SRRichey, RICHEY, and then all of our coverage is available at IlliniHQ.com. And that's all this week. And then on game day, basically the entire day, we'll have content up on our website.
Well, Scott, thank you so much for joining me, and thank everyone for listening to this special edition of the Fast Lane. As always, you can connect with us at Fastlane Ed Lane, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Connect with me at Trey Lyle VT. Thank you so much for listening to this special edition of the Fast Lane.